Sabah everybody and welcome back. The Nord N20 5G is the first Nord to be released in 2022 from OnePlus, and what we have here essentially is a budget-friendly device that has a lot of new features as well as actually some functionalities that we have that typically get taken out of flagship devices, namely the headphone jack and expandable storage. This is definitely here. A large display with a large battery and a lot of really good functionalities. And again, for not so much money. This is why I'm naming the video, Is This the New Budget King? Well, we'll have to actually watch the video and see what happens there. We're going to talk about the things that I liked and the things that I'm concerned a little bit about this device. It's definitely not a perfect device, but it has a lot of things going on for it. So without further ado, this is TK and this is the Nord N20 5G. Let's check it out. Like and subscribe and make sure you hit that bell icon so that you're always notified to whenever we have new videos on the channel. So here we have it, the Nord N20 5G. Again, this right now is currently available on T-Mobile and Metro by T-Mobile. Very soon it's also going to be available on OnePlus's website as well as Amazon and Best Buy. But currently, this is basically the T-Mobile edition. What we have here is a 33-watt charger that's included in the box. This is the charger. Well, let's go ahead and give it a second to focus. This is a 33-watt SuperVOOC charger from OnePlus that's included. We have USB-A to USB-C, OnePlus red cable as we typically have. You get a SIM card or a SIM tray removal tool here, and of course the N20. Now, first thing I'll say, let's go ahead and bring the phone into focus, is the device actually looks very nice. The material on the back is very good. It's not conducive to a lot of fingerprints, but it definitely is very nice. We have a dual camera setup, actually triple technically, because this one actually on the bottom is also a camera. So we have a primary sensor that's a 64 megapixel sensor. We have a 2 megapixel monochrome sensor and a 2 megapixel, what they're calling essentially is a macro lens. And that's going to be here on the back, and a dual tone LED flash. We don't have any wireless charging, but we do have a 4500 milliampere battery that's charged by this 33-watt charger. So definitely fast charging. On the left, we have access to the SIM tray with the as well as the SD card that we're able to expand the storage. We have 128 built into the device, and we can expand it all the way to 512. Volume rocker. And one thing I did want to share with you guys, they did change the style of the SIM tray this time. It's no longer sitting like a long SIM tray. It's actually more one on top of another. And as you can see right there, we have an SD card, full-size SD card, and a SIM tray. It's a single SIM device currently in this version. I'm not sure if they're going to be changing it later on, but at least we have the option of expanding the storage with this device. On the front, we have a 6.4-inch AMOLED panel. It's a 1080p panel with an in-display fingerprint sensor that's going to give us access to this beautiful display. The front-facing camera is a 16-megapixel camera. All of the cameras on this device are going to give us a 1080p resolution experience, and that's primarily limited by the fact that the processor that we're using here is the Snapdragon 695. It's a 5G processor, and we do have access to the 5G connectivity here in the at least on T-Mobile with the ultra capacities with the new bands on Sprint, and of course we're able to get basically sub-6 is primarily the experience that we're getting here. The 6128 is expandable, the 695 is a processor. We also still have a 3.5mm headphone jack that's present on the bottom, one of the microphones, USB-C data charge and transfer, as well as one speaker on the bottom. We do not have stereo speakers on this. Again, this is one of the things that OnePlus had to make a decision on, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. On the right side, we have one button and no rocker. This is a Nord, not the standard OnePlus devices. And of course, on the top, we have one of the additional microphones in there. A very nice package, and again, includes the charger, the cable, and everything you need. There is no screen protector installed on here, but I'm pretty sure you'll be able to pick one up very easily. So as I mentioned to you guys, the display is a 6.4-inch AMOLED panel. We do have access to an always-on display. You can customize that. Fingerprint sensor is built in. And one thing to mention is we still have those shortcuts built in directly into the fingerprint sensor by just keeping and extending the pressing of a button here. So if I press here, I can jump in directly into Instagram. I can customize the different apps. We have up to 5 different apps that we can customize, and they definitely look great. Now, as far as the configuration and the model number, this is the GN2200. Version of software is OxygenOS version 11.3. This is actually running on Android 11, not Android 12. One thing to mention, we are going to be able to get one version of update, so this will go into Android 12 at some point, and we'll receive up to 3 years of security patch updates. And the device is actually IP52 rated, so we definitely have some water and dust resistance. But as far as Android, we start with 11, we're going to jump into 12, and we'll get 3 years worth of security patch updates. As I mentioned to you guys, single SIM, it's in installed, you can definitely check out some of the other information in here. The Snapdragon 695, 6 gigs of RAM, 128 gigs of internal storage. So if you're familiar with the UI element and the system, we have the Google Feed sitting on the left, we have access to the app drawer, and of course we have access to the private space here on the left that you're able to customize with your own personal apps. So you can definitely have two collections of applications. Now, one thing I did want to mention, we still have access to the app cloner, or the app that allows us to run multiple instances of the same app. Instagram is one of them, and I was able to create a second one for the Android Bay account, and the main one is running on the main account here. Although I realize Instagram allows us to install multiple profiles, we can switch. This is just a demonstration of how that works. As far as Geekbench, we'll go ahead and talk a little bit about performance here. Let's go ahead and go here. We'll go into history. Now, running this in performance mode, Geekbench gave me 687 on the single core and 1965 on the multi-core. It's comparable. Again, this is the Snapdragon 695. And when I did mention here about the fact that I was running in performance mode, is that if you go into the system information here and you jump into battery, this is part of Oxygen OS, and it even comes in now with the newer generations of OnePlus devices. Technically, the processor is not running at 100%. It's actually running at somewhat of a throttled experience. To get the full potential, you do need to go into the battery, turn that on, and they do mention to you that when you do that, that it is going to consume battery at a higher rate. But it does actually also show how the device actually performs much, much better when you're using it. Now, as I mentioned to you guys at the beginning, this is a T-Mobile variant or T-Mobile version of this of this model, and what that means essentially is we'll be able to see some T-Mobile applications. With the exception of T-Mobile and the T-Mobile Play app, I was able to disable or uninstall any of the other applications. So if you don't want them, you can, but these unfortunately are system apps that are not disableable. So I can't press and hold and basically jump into the app information, and I cannot. So here, well, actually, this one does have a disable. I take that back. So let's go ahead and put our PIN. And it allows us to disable it. So essentially, if you don't want to use the app, if you're not happy with it, just go ahead and disable it, and it'll allow it to basically do that. Disable the application, and that allows you to basically not have to worry about it, and it will not show up in your app drawer. As far as games and what we have in here, I did install a couple of games. We have Pubg Mobile, and this is, of course, Call of Duty Mobile, and we'll get a chance to check them out. Now, let's look a little bit on the camera, and we'll talk about what we get here. As I mentioned to you guys, we have triple cameras on the back, with the main sensor on this device, the 64 megapixel camera, I feel like is the best camera that's going to come up here, and it's going to give you the best experience that you're able to get. Now, we don't have an ultra wide, we have a main sensor, and then we go 2x and then 5x, and of course, this is all using digital crop. And I feel like at 2x, there's really zero loss in quality, and of course, we can go up to 5x, and you'll start seeing some, a little bit of pixelation depending on the amount of light that you have. We have access to video, as I mentioned, 1080p on the front, 1080p on the back is going to be the maximum. We also have access to the night mode, and I'll share with you guys a few images of those. Portrait mode works on the front-facing and the back-facing camera. And of course, under more, we have dual video, slow motion, time-lapse, panorama. Extra HD provides us the ability of taking a full 64 megapixel readout out of the sensor, so it's going to be a much better image, and I'll share that with you as well. We have expert mode for pro mode, text reader, and of course, macro mode that enables us to use the macro lens, which is very nice for when you want to be able to get some of those really close-up shots. And it tells you right there, it's basically, photographs from 4 centimeters away for best result. So we'll definitely get a chance to check that out. But let's not waste any time. Let's go ahead and jump in and do a quick sample of the front-facing and the back-facing sensor on the N20. Front-facing camera experience is going to be a 1080p resolution on this device all across the main sensors that we have in here. And that's primarily a limitation of the 695. We've seen this on other devices, but this is actually a pretty decent experience. As you could definitely tell, the audio and video from the N20 look pretty decent. Let's go ahead and switch over on the main sensor on the back and then see what are the capabilities we have there. Switching it over to the main sensor on the back, this is going to be the best resolution that we can get here. Even though it's technically the same as 1080p as the front, the sensor will definitely perform better, as this is a much higher megapixel sensor. Overall, a 1080p resolution experience across the front-facing and the back-facing cameras, and this should be a good example of the audio as well on the brand new N20. And as you saw there, again, 1080p resolution on the back will be definitely the best experience you're able to get there. Now, when it comes down to the speakers, as I mentioned to you guys, we don't have stereo speakers. We have a single fire speaker at the bottom. So to be able to tune it, there is basically the Dirac audio tuner that's built in. This is in lieu of having basically, let's say, something like Dolby Atmos. And I will say, though, that the headphone jack on this is definitely absolutely very nice. So I've been using them with my OnePlus buds here, the wired, the bullets from OnePlus, and they sound really, really nice. One of the other things I did want to mention to you guys before we play the song real quick is we have the ability of jumping into personalization, changing the basically the wallpaper, the fingerprint sensor animation, the color scheme, as well as the icon pack. So these are all things that you can definitely do in there. And of course, under additional settings, you have access to the option to turn on the OTG, RAM boost, and of course backup and reset, schedule on and off, retouch appearance and video calls, and so on. All of these options in there, they look really good. And then of course under convenience tool, basically screenshot, power menu, be able to customize that option, gestures and motion, and of course changing this to navigation. As you notice, I'm using navigation gestures. We're not using it basically with just the buttons as it comes out of the box. So now we're going to be playing a quick song. This is Alex Scrindo Jumbo by NCS Release. I have the volume set to 100%, and I left the audio tuner or the Dirac audio tuner to be on automatic. So let's go ahead and play that.
Jack it up.
Definitely sounds pretty good. It gets pretty loud, but definitely, not necessarily the loudest that we can find on a smartphone, but it should be able to be actually pretty good performer for when you're having phone calls and so on, since it actually fires downwards. If you're using the phone, or if you're holding the phone sideways, make sure you put your hand slightly over, since the speaker is at the top right, and it allows it to actually bounce back and come to you a little bit stronger. For best experience, seriously, you should be able to use a pair of wired headphones, and this is going to give you literally the best experience on this device. Not only do they sound great, but you also have stereo experience, and you have additional functionalities depending on your remote, if your headphones include functions that are in there. Now, let's jump in real quick into the gaming experience. We definitely do have the new system in here, so let's go ahead and jump into PUBG Mobile. Now that we're in PUBG, we definitely can see here the new gaming system that we see here. We have access to the time, the temperature, and the percentage of the battery. You also have the ability of doing performance mode between balance, low power, of course, or even performance level. Game focus mode, and of course we have screen recording. Basically here the ability of doing rewind recording, and of course touch optimization. Status here gives us the access to be able to see the frame rate as well as the CPU and GPU performance usage, orientation lock, and of course if you want to launch additional applications, you can customize those and add them. For me, I was able to play a couple of games in here. It actually plays quite well, and on PUBG Mobile I was able to clock in about roughly 40 frames per second consistently. So let's go ahead and jump into a couple of games. Well, let me share with you guys the gaming experience on the Nord N20.
Target's inside! Missile awaiting orders.
So from a gaming experience, this is definitely not a bad device. The 695 is quite capable of giving us a very acceptable gaming experience. We have a large display, 6.43-inch display. We have a 4500 milliampere battery. It's a 1080p panel, and it's an AMOLED panel, which means gaming, we're going to be able to go for quite some time. Performance mode is obviously going to give us the best experience and the best frame rate. Now, the device does not have a 90 Hz refresh rate, so it has a 60 frames per second maximum capacity of being able to demonstrate or provide us that gaming experience. PUBG Mobile, for the most part, ran at 40 frames per second, so I didn't have a really concern there. And when we jump over to Call of Duty, we definitely saw the experience, the difference in there. Now, we're talking about essentially the experience overall as far as cameras on this device. Although we have 4 cameras, we have 3 on the back and 1 on the front. The primary sensor on the back is probably going to be the best experience you can get on this device. Keep in mind, this is a budget-friendly device, so there are going to be some compromises, but necessarily I would say, customizations done to be able to bring the price down to the level to where it is. So, camera experience, definitely I would recommend you living in the 64 megapixel camera sensor. You're going to get the best pictures, you're going to get the best low light, you're also going to be able to get the best experience when it comes down to basically video. And when I say best, I'm talking about the best experience on this device, not best by comparison. I do want to be very clear there. Overall, as you're seeing with the pictures that I'm sharing with you guys right now, this is exactly what you should be able to expect. Pretty decent pictures. If you want to record video or use it for social media or so on, the front-facing camera will do just fine. 16 megapixel camera. I think it's the typical 16 megapixel camera that we've seen before on other OnePlus devices, but definitely nice to see it at this price point. So When it comes down to performance and bang for the buck type of experience, we have an SD card, a headphone jack, a 64 megapixel camera, a large display, it's an AMOLED panel, and we also have, of course, a large battery with fast charging, 33 watts, which is, again, still very fast charging considering some of the other options on the market. And for the price point that they're going with, so I really can't really harp too much on it. I would have loved to have a 90 hertz refresh rate. I would have loved to have stereo speakers, but a consistent 60 frames per second experience with a really good sounding headphone jack that we have on this device is definitely not something we need to kind of forget about or let go. So at the end of the day, I think the N20 is providing us a very good bang for the buck experience. It's definitely a contender for the best budget smartphone for 2022. For me right now, there's really a lot of other competitions on the market. But if you're in the US and you're on T-Mobile or Metro by T-Mobile right now, it's pretty much going to be the best experience you can be able to get there. It supports all of their sub-6 5G that we have, and it gets really crazy speeds. And as you can see right there, 321 down with 15 megabits up. This is on the T-Mobile 5G with ultra capacity. This essentially is the new Sprint bands that T-Mobile incorporated into their coverage. So at the end of the day, I think if you're looking for a smartphone with a good price, I feel like the Nord N20 is definitely going to give you a great experience. Let me know what you guys think about the brand new Nord N20. Like and subscribe as usual. Thank you very much for the support. Thank you to OnePlus for allowing me to be able to check out the N20 and share with you guys my experience. This is TK. I'll see you in the next one.